Hello, race fans. Welcome to another edition of the Goat Rodeo here. This is Jeff Gilder. It's been a while since we've been on. We've been taking a little break. But guess what? We're back. And living color and sound and all that stuff. We got a great guest on tonight. We got Mr. Don Gray from Kingsport, Tennessee. Yep, he's a hometown boy. Been knowing Don, as they say here in South Carolina, Don. They don't say I've known Don. I've been knowing Don. I've been here since 2001, so I've got some South Carolinian in me. But I've been knowing Don Gray all my life. How about that? That's a long time, ain't it? Well, as long as I started knowing Don when I was old enough to know who people were. You know, I don't know.
Explain your way out of
that. That's
good,
dude.
So we got Tim Leeming on with us from Columbia, South Carolina. We've got Jack Walker in the studio here with us. And Mr. Gray is at Grayland in Kingsport, Tennessee. That's where he lives, Grayland. Hey, it's the truth, right?
Yes, it is. I said if Elvis could have it in Memphis, I could have it in Sullivan County.
That's exactly right, man. Sullivan County. That's it. That's exactly
Hey, you want to hear my Elvis story?
No. We're not listening to no Elvis stories
No,
tonight.
please.
All right. So let's dig in here and get this thing going and see what we can come up with. So, Don, I want to cover some of the drag racing part of your story early because that's kind of opposite of what I sent to you on the interview sheet. But in the timeline of Don Gray racing history, that was the first thing that happened, and in the early '60s, and
Right.
And you built Torture, the first '55 Chevrolet gasser. Why did you build that car, man? Why did you decide to get into racing?
Well, there were a couple of reasons that I did that. I bought a new '64 Chevrolet 409 back in '64, and I took it to Willard Gotts in Bluffville, and he did a lot of work on the engine, put a 514 gear in it. We jacked the front end straight up and took the bumper off and put two heater hose or dryer hose back to the carburetors out of the two bright lights in the front. And I kept getting in trouble, staying in trouble with the law. It wasn't for speeding. They got me for drag racing and two or three other things, loud motors. Finally, we got into court, and the judge said, look, I've had enough. He went out. He got off the bench, and we went outside and looked at the car, and he said, look, build you a race car or go to jail. Which one you want? And so that's what happened. That's how Torture got built.
That's cool. I've got a picture up of a young Don Gray with Willard Gott standing over with the top popped up on Torture.
Right.
Well, tell us a little bit about Willard Gott. A lot of people on here may not have heard of him. I know him from being from there, but go ahead.
Willard was a real legend in racing. He'd worked for Smokey Unique for a few years, and then he came home and started running some rails for Ronnie Cox out of Virginia, and they ran all the NHRA, and he knew about everybody there, and he was just a whiz at engines and doing different things, and so I got an opportunity to meet him in '64, and then when this race car come up, I went up to see him, and I said, Willard, can you build me a car for $1,200? And he said, sure can. Come on. And we ended up spending $12,000. But
well, you spent the $1,200, right? He told you the truth.
Well, I'd spent the $1,200 before I got there. Jerry Gully, basically, I bought a used wreck 55 and took it to Jerry Gully, and he put a straight axle under it, and he put a full floater rear end in the back and a cage in it and a seat. And then I took it and got it painted. And I figured that I'd get the car out by 1966, so I put 66, had it lettered, put 66 on the door and all that. And so then when I went to Willard's, the car was ready, and all he had to do was build the engine and do the transmission and the clutch and all of that. So that's how it all come about as far as getting the car ready to go. So we just gone from there. But it was about $12,000 to build it back then, which was a lot of money. I can tell you that for me.
So, did you drive the car, Don?
Yes, I sure did.
So, what did you do any good?
Well, we won about every race we ran. I run in some of these smaller tracks. I got beat once. There was a car out of Virginia that I pulled it back in fourth gear too quick. I thought I had him. I'd run off, just hid, and he top end. He got me, and that's the only time we got beat running at a lot of the shorter tracks or smaller tracks. But yeah, it was it was out there. We had a lot of stuff in that engine and stuff that people didn't have, and we were just a little bit ahead of our time for here. So we done really well with it.
It was a 10,000 RPM car, wasn't it?
Right, it sure was. We had to Willard. What happened there was Willard. He decided we was going to build a high RPM engine. So he had a friend, Jack Chrisman, that ran funny cars for Ford Motor Company, and he was coming in the fall of '95 or late spring, late summer, and Willard had him bring in a lot of the parts for that engine. So he comes in and we get everything together, and we take off and we go to Red Cornettes in Kentucky to get it balanced. And I'll never forget it. Jack was telling Red faster when we were spinning the crank, and Red got his arm caught in the crank there that day and really tore his arm up pretty good. But anyway, so he goes with us, and we come back and we get the engine together, and then he's telling Willard, well, you boys need to go with me, because he was going around running some small drag strips where they'd pay one funny car, two cars would come in and they'd run each other, and they'd, for $500 or $600, sometimes $1,000 a piece, put on a show. So Willard said, you got to go with us. And I said, I can't do it. I've got a job. I can't leave. And he says, yep, got to do it. See if you can get off. So I was working at a plant here, and they gave me a 3 months leave. And so we left with him, and Willard said, I'll show you how to do this. And I said, I don't really have the money to leave either. And Willard said, come on, get $300 and I'll show you how to do this. And for the rest of your life, you can race, and it won't be as expensive as you think. So we left and went with him, and Willard would call those racetracks, and he'd say, look, we're coming. I got this young man here. We've got a 10,000 RPM car, and we're going to put you on a little show of our own. If you give us a little money when we get there, we'll be glad to come in. So we'd get $50, $60, $100. And that taught me a lesson right there, that if I was going to race, people would have to help. So that's what we did. And my first thing we got free was Kindle oil, and then we had spark plug people come on and different things. And so it wasn't too bad a deal. I made enough money to stay on the road. We had a '60 Ford panel truck that was painted yellow, and the car was yellow, and the trailer was yellow, and we just buzzed around and followed Jack around for a while there, and then we kind of split off from him, went our own way there some. But Willard taught me a lot in racing.
Why'd you call it torture?
I had a friend that kept coming around the garage when we were building it at Gully's, and he came to Willard's too once we got up there. But he kept it act like he was aggravating. He kept saying this and saying. One day I said, that car's just torturing you to death, and that stuck. And so I kept that. That was really an original name, and so I put that on the car. And then that was a story behind that.
So before we get into Torture 2, while I've got the picture of Torture up here, you found the car recently, the original car, and restored it. Tell us a little bit about that.
I found it in '93.
I
found the car in '93.
Yeah.
Do what?
I didn't know it was that long ago. Yeah.
Yeah, '93 I found it, and we brought it in, and the guy knew I wanted it really, really bad, and it had come off the trailer and hit a building or something, and it tore up the tail end of it, and it'd been used a lot, and so he knew I wanted it. I had a 75.5 gentleman GMC pickup parked up here at one of my rental properties, and I had an old El Camino. So he comes over and he says, "Tell you what, I'll take $1,000 and those two vehicles." I couldn't say no. I let him have them. Brought the car in, and it just, I kept it around a while, and then I took it to a boy down in Morristown, and went from there. And he did some work. My body shop owned a trucking company, and they did some body work stuff on it. And we went from there, and then it took 25 years to get it to where it is today.
Holy cow. I'll tell you what, it looks
I had a lot of going on, and I couldn't do it all at once, but gradually got it now to where I can show it at these races.
So when did you finish it?
As a matter of fact, 2 months ago.
Wow.
I mean, that's how long it took, over a period of years. The first paint job on that car was $100, and I used Sherwin-Williams paint. A gallon of that was $10. This job this time was $6,800 to paint it, so there's a lot of difference.
Yeah, goodness gracious. So how original is it?
Just about. Well, the original car at the first had we just had steel wheels on it, and then at the end of 95 or 65, we put American magnesium on it, and these got just American aluminum wheels on it. It doesn't have the original seat, and it doesn't have the original engine, but it does have a Hilbert injector. I had a 65 model injector, and it's got a 66 model on it now. But it's basically the same. It's still got the fiberglass front end on it, but the seat. I've got the original 10,000 RPM tack. I still have the original 617 rear end that was in it when I raced it. And I have the 4-bolt mains that was on the 301 the first time. We had some mains that were made. Jack brought them in from California. We had 4-bolt mains on that engine. So
cool.
It's I don't know what kind of percentage you would say, but it's pretty much like it was when I had it, other than those things about it.
So did you run Torture until you built Torture 2, or was there a gap there, or what happened?
No, I quit in 68, backed off it. Other things were coming along in my life, and that's why I backed off and quit. And I didn't do anything else until 72, and then I got into dirt racing. And so we ran a 64 Chevelle from 72 to 73, and we had a little success, not a lot, but I got the bug. Let's put it that way. So,
and so, what's the story behind Torture 2?
Well, Torture 2 was I've got a coffee cup sitting here on my desk in front of me. It says, "Here's to unfinished business," and that's what one of the magazines talked about. That how I had to finish this. We went out and toured for 3 months, or three months, 2 weeks, and I just didn't finish up what I really wanted to do. So I decided in 94, I guess, that I'd build Torture 2, which was a super gas car, and it had a pro stock chassis under it, and it sit right on the ground, and it was called Torture 2. It's basically like the original Torture. It was just more modern with a bigger engine, had a 572 in it, and we went out and ran all of NHRA with it. So, and we won Bristol. It's good to win in your hometown, so we won Bristol. We went to Darlington for IRHA and set them a world record in speed down there, and so we did pretty well with that car. We ran it 3 years, and then I had to get that back out. I backed off again because racing really consumes me when I get into it. And there's, I never wanted to be full time at it, so I'd do it a while and then back off. But I had a light heart attack when we were running NHRA, so I decided I better back down a while. So I backed off of that. So that's what happened with that car. But anyway, that was an experience. I can tell you that.
I can relate to the consuming part. I mean, I'll tell you what, it's hard to, it's been 18 years, I guess, since I raced,
right.
17 years. I can still remember almost every lap. I mean, it's just, it never goes away,
I can remember your racing. You really done well, to be honest with you. You done really well. You won some races. You proved your point, and
yeah, I
haven't forgotten it, so there you go.
I appreciate that. So let's talk about dirt racing and Bill Morton and NDRA and Robert Smalley and Volunteer Speedway. So let's start out with Volunteer Speedway. When did you get involved with Volunteer Speedway?
I bought Volunteer Speedway in 1983. I had some stockholders or partners in that with me, but we bought that thing in 1983 and we owned it through 1987. That was an adventure on its own, I can tell you that.
It seems like I remember you putting new dirt on the track.
We did. I was building a commercial building here, and the dirt that was down there just really wasn't the kind it needed, and it had a belly in it. I can imagine what I'm saying. Yep. From the banks, it was bellied out all the way around. So we decided to bring this dirt because it's perfect for it. Kingsport Speedway went from asphalt or concrete, where they were, to dirt, and they used it, and then we hauled some down to Bull's Gap or Volunteer and used it on that track. And it made a lot of difference. It picked the cars up almost a second faster when we did that.
So that 83, you were there right in the middle of the NDRA and there until after the demise of the NDRA.
Right.
Yeah. So the NDRA started in 1978, and you were around and involved then, and had some input on the rules. Tell us about that.
Bill and I took the car and went to Eldora to the World 100. At that time, they were paying $10,000 for a meet. So we go up, and Bill does really well up there. And when we come back, we're on a pole the first day. I got to throw that in there. And then motor mount broke, and he ended up starting eighth. But we were on the pole for a while. And so when we came back, Robert Smalley come by to see me and asked me how it went, and I explained it to him. He said, well, I'll be back in a few days. I want to talk to you some more. So he came back, and he said, how would you like to be a partner in a racing sanction? And I said, I don't know, Robert. Tell me what you got. So he said, well, I'll make you a partner, and we'll call it the National Dirt Racing Association or whatever. And he said, I need $10,000 to start it. So I said, well, I got to think about that. And I thought about it for a while, and I thought, I don't know if I want to be that deeply in it. But so I told Rod, I said, what I'll do, I'll help you get it started. I'll write the rules for you, and I'll stay with you until you get really going, and I'll help you get your first track to start. So I did that. I wrote the rules for NDRA, and I went down and talked to him. We went to Newport for his first race. And I talked to Newport to get him down there and get it started. So basically started on a shoestring, and he made enough money off the first meet because there's well over 100 cars there to pay the bills and pay everybody. And it just went from there.
He's still known by people that know what happened in it. Somebody who influenced late model dirt racing yet today with those purses and bringing in the type of sponsorship that he brought into the deal with Slits and Strohs and Dutch Treat cigars and those kind of things. And paying those big purses. There's still very few races today that pay those purses. And, he really was quite a visionary on top of being a showman and a promoter.
The showman part was a lot of how he did what he did. He could really talk and do his thing, and he could get sponsors and attract them, and he made a lot of noise. He'd talk everywhere he went. He was on TV everywhere he'd go, and he'd get on the television or on the radio, and he started picking up those sponsors. He got the cigar company, he got the Strohs, and things were really going well. We followed him around, raced some with him, and it kept going on and on. He got into it a little bit with NASCAR. I don't know if he got into it. Well, he was saying that, we're going to take this. We'll be the next NASCAR dirt wheel. And, and it just went down. But then I think what I can remember is he lost a sponsor or something, or he lost one of his sponsors, and it just kind of phased out on him, and he just kind of let it go. But, he done really well with it as long as but I think he just, after a while, just gave up on it.
So,
I'm not really sure at the end just exactly what happened because I done moved on after that.
So, Bill Morton and you guys, how long did Bill Morton drive for you? What span of time was that?
He drove for me from 74 to 1980. 1980, yes.
Don, this Jack. Did Bill Morton run some of the early NDRA races? Because I've seen the Gaffney results, and I got the Myrtle Beach results here from 78, and he's not in either one.
Yeah, we ran some of them. The first race, we actually sat on the pole at
Newport.
At Newport, we sat on the pole and lapped the field. We were lapping the field, and crank broke, and that hurt, boy. That hurt Bill really, really bad. But we had them covered, and they had over 100 cars come out for that race, and we were showing them what it's all about, and that crank broke. But anyway, we ran some of the races with those. We were bounty hunting. Bill and I done a lot of bounty hunting. We'd go around, people with tracks would say come out and beat this guy, and we'll pay you X amount of dollars if you'll show up. So we did a lot of that, and we didn't really follow NDRA a bunch. We ran some of them, but not a lot of them.
Okay. So I got some pictures up here. I've got of Bill's cars. I've got the Chevy 2, and I've got the 72 and the 73 Camaro that I've been running through the stream here to let folks see. You and I talked about this the other day when I had you on the phone. I can't remember why, but during my youth, I somehow wandered into your garage, and I can't remember if the car was backed in or pulled in. You'll have to tell me, but if it was backed in, it was the left front I think y'all had off, and Freddie Chase was in there. And you'd have thought that I walked in on some sort of top secret mission when that happened. I mean, I don't remember everything, but you guys had it going on, man. You had some things figured out.
Well, we had some stuff that a lot of people didn't have. In the 72 Camaro that Bill drove for me in 74 and 5. In 75, we got a slipper clutch that people didn't have. We were testing it for a company, and back then the cars, we didn't have them where they'd hook as well off the corner, and that clutch you could set it up to slip so far out, and then it'd be hooked up totally. So we had that, and we a lot of stuff we had, we didn't want people to know we had it, and so that might have been the problem. It could have been laying out. I'm not sure, but that was some of it. And then we'd like, if you we had gates on it. We didn't like people coming around seeing. If we were working on a car, it was shut up. We didn't let anybody in.
Yep.
And Freddie was the only real crew member I had. Actually, Freddie followed me. He was with me from Torture through my last race car, through my last dirt car. And so he was an asset to me.
Freddie Chase actually helped me on my car.
He was
some. Yeah.
Yeah, he followed me everywhere we went. We'd go no matter where we went. Freddie was right there with me, boy. He stuck with me, and so right before he passed away, I put on a race at Kingsport for Bill Morton and Bill Morton night or more, whatever it was, and I introduced Freddie as a crew chief and told the crowd, I said we'd have never got where we did hadn't been for Freddie. He was, and I really and truly meant that, and it meant a lot to Freddie. I know that. So in about 3 months, he passed away. So
yeah, that meant the world to Freddie. I guarantee you that did. That was a cool thing to do right there. It was.
Yeah.
Yep. So
anyway, so
go ahead.
You want the next?
Yeah.
The 74 Camaro I raced in 76 and 77.
All right.
You have a photograph?
Yep, I got that up. Yep.
That car was built by Max Simpson. That was Buck Simpson's crew chief or car owner. And I bought that car from him. He'd built that car just for one reason, and that was for David Pearson to run in Detroit. And so they took it up there to a race in the Dome. He ran that car and then come back, and I met him by accident, and he was telling me he had this car, so I bought it, and that was a good thing. To buy that car got me in tight with Max, and Max, he came along about like Willard did and taught me how to make a car really work and how to get around a racetrack, and that was really something. So when we built the Chevy 2, the next car there, I took it. Herman Goddard built that car for me in Knoxville, and so we brought it home, and I called Max and I said I'd like to bring it down. So he invited me to come to his house, and I stayed a week and a half with him, and he had a shop there behind his house, and he absolutely tore that car apart. He worked me to death. We took the front end out from underneath of it, took the rear springs out, and did an awful lot of work. And he showed me how to make a car work, how to make it hook up, and did things that I had no knowledge of, stuff that he knew. So we were really bad with that car. And about that same time, a company came around. I met up, and they offered me a small clutch, a little 3-disc clutch that used automatic flywheel ring. And back at that time, they didn't make automatic flywheel rings. You couldn't buy anything aftermarket, so we had to use a regular Chevrolet automatic flywheel rings, and they didn't last. You'd have trouble with them coming out. But when we got that, and I ran a developed that winter. I developed a 406 engine, 400 block, and so what we did, John Reed made the cranks for him, and so I used a longer rod in that engine, and used a Speedway cam that I got from a friend of mine that worked for one of the race teams, and we used a cam in that engine that came from Crane. They used them in running Talladega and Daytona, and so I went to Bud Berkey's. You familiar with him?
Yes, sir. I know Bud well. Yep.
So Bud, we developed that engine at Bud's, and what we came up with, I'd seen them trying to race those engines, and they couldn't do it. So what I figured out on my own, that if I could take two hoses and come out of the water pump on each side and come back to the center of the block and go in the center at the drain cocks, I could put water in there because they were Siamese bored. They were Siamese blocks, and water didn't flow between the cylinder walls.
Yep. And
it worked. Huh. And we had the upper hand for a couple of years. One of the major parts companies that sell race car parts had that after a year, started selling that. You could order it and buy it. I mean, that was fine, but, it got out that was working, and so somebody started making them for them, and they sold it for a while, but it really made it good for us because we could run good. And then we had Max set the car up, and we were just absolutely winning everything we did. I mean, where we went, it was always winning.
I remember back in the early part when I first started racing, I was racing on dirt, and I had Fred White build me a 350, a really durable 350 to run in my car. And in my class, I ran against the guys that were running the 406s. And
yeah.
if the 406s stayed in the race, I had a hard time. I'd run second, third, fourth. I couldn't win a race. But invariably, everybody was having problems with 406s overheating. Even then, if I could hang in there, I ended up getting some good finishes because the 406s didn't last.
We never had a problem once I put those hoses on, and I remember Williams Machine Shop. You remember where that was here?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure do. Yep.
I took the water pump up there, and he got the hoses and everything built for me.
That's pretty cool.
That engine stayed cool. We lost a crank out of one of them when we were running that NDRA race, but other than that, they were just super. Bud Berkey did a great job. He took those heads, and 406 is kind of like getting up in the 400, like a 427. You got to have a big head. Now Chevrolet was too small a head; they couldn't get enough breath, Yep. So he went in there and he absolutely tears the inside those heads up, not to the point that they crack or have a problem, but they could get more air, and they done really well. And we'd run those things, man, and had that little clutch, and we were bad. Yep. We were bad. I mean, anybody can remember it, tell you, and that thing would come up off the corner, the left rear would almost be flat. It'd be digging so hard off the corner. I've had several people back years that was going on would come later here in life and say, man, I can remember that car coming off the corner and the left rear would be flat on it. So we made a lot of deals back then, and we did a lot of bounty hunting and here and there, and they called me to come beat somebody, and we'd go beat them. We did a lot of things, like they called us to come to a racetrack up in Virginia. We go up there, and they pay us to come up. And so the first night we go up, we get beat. We run second behind that guy, but we go back the next week, get the same amount of money to go back, and I take an orange juice can and put it on the firewall, and take a rubber hose and come out of it and come up to the breather, and then go into the top of the breather with that rubber hose, and I painted that orange juice can black. So we go up there and we raise the hood, and everybody's around looking, and it just tore them all to pieces. We won that race, and after the race they protested. So what I did was went over, I had Freddie take that can off, and I gave it to the guy at protesters. I said, you can have it. Still had to smell orange juice in it.
Oh, that's
well,
good.
I need to ask while everybody's laughing here, did you prefer drag racing over dirt track, or what was your preference?
Well, no, I'll tell you, I like drag racing, and I like, I like running NHRA, and I liked Torture the first year. I liked it all, but dirt racing was let me tell you something. In the spring, anybody could win a race on dirt, but in the summertime,
yes, sir,
that's when the men stayed and the boys went home.
That is the truth. And truer words have never been spoken, man.
If a car didn't hook up, you were in trouble. And, you needed an asphalt setup basically on dirt when it got dry and slick. And we just, thanks to Max Simpson, I knew how to do it. And we just, anybody can boast, but I'm saying we were really good. And anybody that remembers knows we were. So
absolutely true. Yeah. I remember I've run some races at Bulls Gap, some Sunday afternoon races down there in the summertime, and dude, I'm gonna tell you what, that was a different world. It was totally different
it sure was.
Yep. So go ahead. Go ahead. No.
I was just saying we traveled around a lot, and that was important to me to go out and show what I had and to win races and to get some money for coming. There was one guy called us once and asked us to come to Corbin, Kentucky. Corbin, where Colonel Sanders had his first place. We went up there to race, and they offered us $500 to show up and to win to beat the guy. So what I did, me and Freddie went in there that night. We raced. We ran somewhere and came home. And then that night, I pulled the headers off, and we put some galvanized collectors on it and made them real long and oval shaped so that they'd splatter and make a lot of racket. So we take off, we go up there, and we have to turn down this small road getting into the racetrack. So I put a choke feed on it, and so I could pull the throttle back a little bit. So we start that thing up going down that small road, and it on the trailer on the back, or hauler. I had a hauler at that time. And we go down in there, and that thing's a rumping and a stumping and a carrying on, and them tubes on those headers just making an awful racket. Everybody got to working on their cars, and there wasn't no way we could beat them. I told Bill, I said, you go out there and make a lap or two, and just get up speed and then hide behind one of those light poles, and don't let them know we don't have enough to beat them, because we were a dirt car and they were asphalt. Everybody went to working on their cars, and we won the race. The thing about it was, when we went up to get paid, the promoter had taken off and gone.
Oh, no.
So Bill goes into his concession stand, and he takes all the bologna, or no, the hamburgers and the hot dogs, all the stuff to go with it, loads it all up in that truck. Some of it fixed, some of it wasn't fixed, all that stuff. We come home. That's all we got out of that race. I'll never forget that. But he took what that man left in that concession stand.
That's a good story right there now. That's a classic.
Story.
So I'm looking at a car, and it was titled Talladega Museum, and it's a 41 car with a wing on the top. Tell me about that car.
Right. That belonged to Bill. Bill raced that car for years, and so when I was doing the 72 Camaro, and it was at his shop behind the shop. And so when we moved over and got had the Chevy 2, I asked Bill one day, I said, you want to sell that thing? And he said, yeah. I said, what do you want? And he said, $300. So I bought it. All was there was the old chassis. There wasn't a rear end, transmission, motor, nothing, but just the whole hull of the car was there. So I bought the thing, and I took the parts. I took the rear end and some of the parts out of the 72 Camaro, the engine, and in that car I had a 355 engine in it, and I took it out because I still had it. I took it out and put it in that car, and got it all ready and dressed up, and then we sent it to Talladega, and it's in the museum down there.
Don, is that a wing on top of it in the picture?
Do what?
Is that a wing on top of the 41 in that picture?
Yes, it is.
So
right
around here they would call that a skeeter car. Is that what y'all called them up there?
Yeah. Well, no, we just called it a modified. Bill ran dirt with it around an area here, and so we got it back together, and it was just a thrill for him. He just absolutely thrilled to death to have it back. And then we got it. He alone really talked to somebody, and so they asked to bring it to Talladega, and that's where it went.
So
it's the museum down there at the racetrack.
So one of your neighbors just commented. Gary Taylor says hello.
He's a good boy.
He is. Me and Gary went to school together, and we're best friends, and he's a good
right.
dude. Bill. Don, I need to ask you about do you watch any NASCAR races today, or you got any interest in it at all?
Well, not really. I used to like it some. It's changed so much. My opinion in that, it went from blue collar to white collar, and that's not. I guess the big corporations come in with the money, and the big money went into it. And the ticket prices went up, and a lot of people couldn't go because the blue collar men couldn't afford to pay those prices. Then when they couldn't go, they could watch it on TV. Well, that didn't get their kids interested in racing because they didn't go to tracks. And in my opinion, that's kind of what's happened to NASCAR. But that's my opinion. I don't know if that's correct or not.
You absolutely repeated one of the reasons I give is, I was interested in it because my dad was interested in it. He took me to my first race at Sportsman Speedway in Johnson City when I was 4 years old, and I saw Tiny Lund and Brownie King and people like that racing, and that stayed with me. And today the kids don't. We're losing generations, of fans. So I agree with you 100% on that. So
they just didn't. I didn't mean to interrupt. When TV came in and all the big money, the prices at the races went up. People couldn't afford that, and just a lot of different things happened, and kids didn't have interest because they didn't go. And I'm repeating myself, but I think that's what hurt them a lot. And cars, these cars they got today, they're all alike. In my opinion, and I haven't seen one in a long time, but other than on TV, but they look like the only difference in them is the nose pieces. The Toyotas don't look like what they're racing. So,
yeah, I agree. So I want to summarize things here. When I think of Don Gray, okay, and your racing, you were a winner all the way around. I mean, you built a state-of-the-art drag car. I mean, you were early to the track with that kind of technology and stuff. I mean, you're dirt racing. You were innovative, and you guys won races. You led there. You made your impact in racing. I mean, you've made your place in racing history, and now I think you said, you're 73. Is that what you told me?
Yes.
So how do you feel about all that? Was it worth it? Would you do it again? Are you satisfied yet?
Well, I don't know for sure. I would do it again. A lot of people, like when I was running NHRA, people say, "Are you having fun yet?" Well, they knew you weren't. It's stressful.
Yeah.
It was always kind of stressful because I was only there to win. I wasn't there for anything else other than to win and to, so I stayed stressed a lot. But we did our thing. And now that you asked me to do all this, it's given me a chance to look back over them. I didn't realize I had this many cars. You got them, but you don't think about it too much. So when I dug all this stuff out, I stayed pretty busy, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. You were busy, and you spent a fortune. Everybody that's ever done anything in racing knows what it costs.
Well, it did cost, but people used to ask my wife. They'd say, "I bet he spends a lot of money racing," and she'd say, "No, he never does." What happened was we had winning cars, and we always had a lot of parts help. I used to sell parts to some of the guys that ran Kingsport in different places. I'd sell my used parts. Well, we'd run shocks on dirt. I'd run them 2 weeks and to most, and I'd take them off, and we'd put new ones on. And we did a lot of bounty hunting and stuff that helped pay the bill. So it wasn't really as expensive for me. Now this Torture 2, that was expensive, but once we got out on the circuit, then parts and stuff, we didn't have a problem because we got what we wanted to do that with. But we spent some money, but not a great deal.
That's cool. I want to say this while we're still on the air. Karen Tunnell from Kingsport Speedway. Hi, Karen. Chanel. I never could figure how to pronounce Chris's name. I raced against him some. Says that they have a kids club at Kingsport Speedway, and they're trying to keep the up-and-coming generation interested in the grassroots. And hats off to you for that. That's awesome. These folks do a great job down there.
They're doing great over there. That's what's happened to a lot of the tracks are closing down, and Kingsport stayed with it, and they're picking up some of the cars where the other tracks aren't there, and so their attendance is great. They're doing really well over there. I can remember when you ran there a lot.
Yep, I had the pleasure of running Kingsport as dirt when it was on dirt, and then when it was concrete. And I can tell you this, that was the hardest track on dirt to figure out. I never could get it dialed in exactly right on dirt. I won some races there on dirt, but I ran a lot better at Volunteer than I did Kingsport with my dirt car. But when I got my asphalt car, concrete, but running there on concrete, Paul Lewis came along, and dude, he taught me how to drive that track. He showed me a line around that track that nobody else was running, and it didn't make any sense at all to me. But he made me run 1,000 laps of practice, and he was right, man. And I
tell you, Kingsport's hard on cars. It makes a car. It picks up flex a lot quicker. It's hard on a car, but it's fast.
It is fast, and turn 1 and 2 was the trouble corner for everybody. John A. Utzman, I used to sit and watch him run lap after lap after lap after lap because John A. could flat get around that thing on dirt. And I could never.
Yeah, driving a Ford, if you can imagine that.
If you can imagine that, yeah.
I mean, back when Fords weren't winning,
Yeah.
on short tracks, they weren't that good. Boy, he was. He'd clean the Chevrolet's plow.
Yeah, he sure could. Well, Don,
I
got to tell you,
remember,
man. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No.
You remember the Billy Babb car?
Yes, sir. I remember Billy Babb car. That was a beautiful car. Yeah.
Well, the Kingsport Speedway, they sent it Billy's daddy wanted me to build him a car, so I decided to go down and do it. And when they sent a man out every week to check that car because it's going to be a street class, and they sent a man out every week to look at that car to see how it was coming. And when we took it over, if you remember, I remember you telling Billy, don't touch a thing on that car because it was really a bad car.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
yeah, absolutely. That thing was fast, man. It was. I've got a
it looked like a Winston Cup car. I mean, everything, it was just absolutely out there. And so the next year they come with Super Street. They changed that to Super Street cars because everything was perfect on that car. The wheels set up on the fender wells. It was just out there. It was just something else. So yeah. I wanted to put that in there for Billy because Billy passed away too. And
oh wow, I didn't know that.
But he won several races with it, and I had a lot of help on it. So that was one bad car right there.
Yeah, I was trying to find the picture. I've got it here in this library somewhere, but I'm not going to be able to get it on the show because I can't seem to pull it up there. But that was a beautiful car. I will put that picture in the gallery with your other stuff though, and you'll notice it
when you see it. The TNT put the cage in it there in Bluff City, Tiny Flats, and I had them move that cage back, and you can see that when you see it. It was just really, that was a well-rounded car. It was just absolutely, it was one of the first coil spring cars everywhere that had any, it would work. And so it made Billy feel good, and I'm glad it did before he passed away.
Yeah, that was a great car, beautiful car. Well, I got to tell you, buddy, it's been a real pleasure to have you on here and talk about those times with you, buddy. I've enjoyed this a whole bunch. And
I have too, and I appreciate you letting me do it.
Well, I'm going to get up that way before too long, come up to see my mom, and I'll bring a camera and some stuff. I'd like to sit down and get some of this on video with you.
Okay, I want to show you my new trailer that I've got where I'm showing torture. I'm following that Southeastern Gassers Association, showing it, so trying to get it into a museum, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing it. And so come up and I'll show you what I've got going on there.
All right, buddy, I'll sure do it. And thanks again, man. Love it. Appreciate
it. Yeah, thank you, and bye-bye.
All right, take care.
It was great. Yes, it was.
That was good. Folks, Don Gray Trucking Company, Don Gray Racing, Don Gray Motorsports. I mean, the dude did everything first class, I mean, he did. And everybody that ever knew anything about Don Gray knew that he was serious about his racing now. And I had forgotten about that car he built for Billy Babb until I saw it in the picture thing. And when they showed up with that car, I went, holy smoke, man. And Billy was struggling at first, I remember, and I said, dude, don't touch that car. That thing is perfect. It was a great car. All right, so that was fun, man.
Yeah, it was. That was good.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it too. I tell you what.
So let's do the Carolina Race Place Historic Race Finish, and we've got an NDRA race that we did before, but in honor of this interview, we thought we'd do it again. How's that?
Yeah, man, we pulled it out of the mothballs as we did it on the show probably a couple of years ago, but. Since we knew we were going to have Don on tonight, we dusted it off, and here it goes.
There you go.
In 1978, Robert Smalley of Kingsport, Tennessee, formed the NDRA, which was called the National Dirt Racing Association. Smalley's vision was to have a dirt track series paying an unheard-of race purse of over $29,000 at small tracks in the Southeast. The winner of each 100-lap race would receive $10,000 for the victory. The first points race for the new NDRA series was won by Bobby Thomas at East Alabama Motor Speedway on August 5, 1978. 2 weeks later, the second race was won by C.L. Pritchard at Cherokee Speedway in Gaffney, South Carolina. The next race on the 1978 NDRA schedule was Myrtle Beach Speedway on September the 2nd. Myrtle Beach Speedway started the 1978 season as a paved track, but in June the pavement was removed and replaced with dirt. The Winter Performance 100 was a two-day event with time trials on Friday and the feature race on Saturday. Over 40 cars showed up trying to get into the 24-car starting field on the 6/10 mile dirt track. There was a preliminary 50-lap consolation race which awarded the first three finishing a starting position in the 100-lap race. The winner of the consolation race was local driver H.P. Larimore from Conway, South Carolina. During the 50-lap race, driver Ricky McNeil was involved in a wreck and suffered a minor neck injury. Several drivers were unable to secure a starting spot in the 24-car starting field, including Doug Kinnemer, Joe Frisson, J.D. McDuffie, Jackie Rogers, Mike Owens, Tommy Bostic, Lee Edwards, Harold Fountain, Roger Kennedy, Rodney Combs, and Spud Long. A lot of good drivers just didn't make the race. The big race got started with Bobby Thomas taking the lead on the first lap. Thomas continued to lead until lap 25 when he had a tire problem. Charlie Mincy was the next leader, with Leon Sills and Leon Archer right on his bumper. A few laps later, Sills was involved in a three-car wreck with Mike Duvall and Joe Ritchie. On lap 30, Benny Klontz lost control and wrecked his car. About the same time, David Pearson, who started 21st and had worked his way up to 12th, pulled into the pits with mechanical problems. On lap 64, Leon Archer of Griffin, Georgia, driving the number 222 Camaro, was able to pass Mincy for the lead. Archer led all the way to the checkered flag and won the biggest paycheck of his career. At the finish, the first 9 cars were still on the lead lap. And then I had as a side note, Leon Archer would end up being the first season champion for the NDRA after 13 events. So here's the way they finished September the 2nd, 1978, the NDRA race number 3 at Myrtle Beach Speedway. The winner, number 222, Leon Archer from Griffin, Georgia, in a Camaro, followed by the number 16 of Charlie Mincy from Kennesaw, Georgia, in a Vega. Finishing third, the number 90 of Billy Thomas, Columbus, Georgia, in a Firebird. Finishing fourth, the number 22 of Bobby Thomas from Phoenix City, Alabama, in a Camaro, followed by Jerry Inman, Bruce, Mississippi, Mike Head, Jonesboro, Georgia, Jimmy Edwards Jr., Hope Mills, North Carolina, Dick Mills, Elberton, Georgia, Ronnie Johnson, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Coming in 10th, C.L. Pritchard, Livonia, Georgia, Craven Kiker, Timmonsville, South Carolina, Roscoe Smith, Griffin, Georgia, H.C. Pritchard, Sumter, South Carolina, Jerry Rector, Greenville, South Carolina, Leon Faircloth, Fayetteville, North Carolina, was 15th, H.P. Larimore, Conway, South Carolina, Hop Holmes, Conway, South Carolina, Benny Klontz, Chesney, South Carolina. 19th, Mr. David Pearson, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Finishing 20th, Leon Sells, Mapleton, Georgia, followed by Joe Ritchie, Rheingold, Georgia, Mike Duvall, Gaffney, South Carolina, Slick Gibbons, Manning, South Carolina, and the final car finishing in the 24th position, Doug Osteen from Gaffney, South Carolina. So that's the way it was, September 2nd, 1978.
That's cool, man. Appreciate you doing that. Appreciate you doing it. So, Tim, what have you been up to, bud?
Been working. I'll tell you what, I got a lot going on with a lot of writing that I do in some of the historic organizations that I'm involved with, and I'm loving every minute of it. Just doing that. I was up at Frances Flock's surprise birthday party Saturday.
And she's 90?
And she turned 90 on Friday.
How about that?
And they had a surprise birthday party for her on Saturday, and the people that showed up, I mean, it was like a NASCAR reunion from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It was quite a shindig, and I have never seen so many birthday cakes in all my life in one place. That's because cool. She had square ones, she had round ones, she had tall ones, she had short ones. The food was good, the company was great, the conversation was awesome, and Frances is so amazing. She has not one gray hair in her head.
That is amazing. She's an amazing lady, yeah.
Yeah, being the stupid person that I am, I asked her, I said, Frances, do you color your hair? She was so sweet. But she said, no, I never had. I haven't had to. And she's right. I mean, there is not one gray hair in her head. And considering the heart problems that she has had, she practically died a couple of years ago. In fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, she did die. What do they call it? Near death or whatever experience. Yeah. And came back, and she is just full of life, and it's just unbelievable. But we've got so many things that go on with the historic people. We've got Augusta International Raceway coming up in September. The banquet will be on Friday night, and Bobby Allison is being inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. Donnie was inducted last year, so both of them are expected to be back. And I'm just working with so many different things, but I'm having fun with every bit of it.
Well, that's good, man. I'm glad we're able to catch up again. I'm not sure right now when we do the next show. We'll get it figured out and put an announcement up there. I apologize for the lack of continuity, but work's got to happen, and that's what I do. So we're going to get on out of here so I can get home, and I missed lunch. I'm hungry. And get something to eat. Jack, thanks for coming, buddy, and appreciate you. Tim, thank you, and thanks to you folks that turned in and let us to be part of the evening. We appreciate you too. So, and a big thanks to Don Gray for coming on, and you'll be seeing some more stuff. I'm gonna do as much as I can over the next little bit to document Don's history on racersreunion.com. Make him a gallery up there and get some stories. That's a good deal.
Does he ever come down to Myrtle Beach?
He was here last week.
Oh, really?
And did a quick to show that car a week before last, and I didn't know it, and he didn't. I don't know if he knew how to get in touch with me, but a friend of mine started all this. Chap Slaughter. He said, "Hey, Don Gray's going to be down there. You need to get up with him." And then by the time we found out about it, he'd already been here. So,
man, if he makes another trip, we need him in the studio.
Oh, I think it'd be great to get him in here, man. It would.
Yeah.
Because listen, we just tipped. You can imagine the stories that the dude has, we know how we like the stories. So, all right, folks, we're going to get out. Appreciate it. Love you guys. Mean it. Thanks for tuning in. To each and every one of you, good night and God bless.
Good night, guys. It was great to be together again for another show. So we'll catch you whenever the next text message says we'll be here.
Thank you, Tim.
Good night, Tim.
Take care, buddy. We'll see you, buddy.
Good night, Jack.